ladies and gentlemen, to Peace Talk episode 167. Just glad to be back to do another episode here in this Leo season. I see Mimi LLC has joined God Squad. Thank you very much for joining the membership. Shout out to Son Goku first in the chat. We recently did the Cosmic Energy Tune-Up last week. So for you God Squad members and Infinity Club members, that is available. Anyway, other than that, shout out to Dreaming with Tess, shout out to Jackie New, shout out to Miko, shout out to Jenny, shout out to those of you joining us in the live chat, whether you watch this replay after the fact or you're here live with us. I definitely have a super awesome guest today, and I had the honor of actually being interviewed by her, which was really, really awesome. I'm going to talk a bit about that. But without further ado, I would like to present to you Miss Maryanne. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your show.
Absolutely. Oh, no problem. Definitely agreed as well. And for those who are interested, where are you?
I'm in Australia, in South Australia, in a place called Adelaide. Yeah.
Also, I've heard about Adelaide, but I didn't know that was South Australia. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. And it's cold here. It's not summertime, that's for sure.
Really?
It's pretty cold. Yeah.
Wow. That is very unique, knowing that here it's like triple-digit degree weather around this time, especially in the and it was 80. It's in the 80s today. It's not as hot, which is kind of cool. But yeah, Jenny D said she loves your accent. That's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
And is Sydney like Central Australia, North Australia, or is it like also close to
It's all eastern. So Victoria and New South Wales and Queensland is pretty much the eastern part of Australia, and then you've got the Northern Territory, which is the top part of Australia. The central part is Alice Springs, and that is where that's like pretty sacred land, Aboriginal land. And then to the west, far to the west, is Perth. So from Adelaide to Perth, I think it's like a 4 or 5 hour flight. So in America, imagine if you flew 4 or 5 hours, you'd be, pretty much across the other side of the country. That's pretty much the same as us, but there's nothing really in between.
Interesting. Okay, just a lot of land, and like okay,
just land. Yeah, yeah.
And then you were saying that it's cold out there now. So is that the weather like in the north and east, or is it just in the south that it's kind of chilly?
It's more the south and the east. It's cold. In the Northern Territory, it doesn't really get cold. It's usually pretty hot. And same with Western Australia. It's pretty mild now. It'll probably be mid sort of mid temperatures. But in Victoria, I was there last week. It was like 1 degree overnight, so it was quite cold. But in Adelaide, where I am, it doesn't get that cold.
Okay. And then during like October and December, does it get warm there, or is it still cold?
No, it gets really hot. So then we're like 40 degrees. Yeah, it gets and it stays that way. In Adelaide, we get about 4 months of straight heat. So it's 35 and up pretty much for 4 months at least.
So it really is the opposite hemisphere. So it really is like winter while it's spring and all that stuff, or at least hot while it's cold. That's really interesting. And also really cool because I know a huge question some people have is, how like the experience of your astrology and sign would be different in the southern hemisphere, since like tropical is based on northern. And for those who are also interested, what is your sun, moon, and rising?
So my sun is Leo, my moon is Capricorn, and my rising is Aquarius.
Okay, nice. I forgot you had your moon in Cap. That's very awesome.
Yeah, it's a bit intense.
Yeah, how is the Pluto retrograde? How have you been feeling that?
I feel like I'm being pulled left, right, and center, and my whole world feels pretty much upside down, even though nothing has actually changed. Like it's business as usual internally. I feel, like I'm all over the joint, but hopefully it starts to settle down soon, but we'll see. But it's interesting that what you were saying about the way astrology works with the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Because recently I looked at astro cartography, and I had a look to see where I'm recommended to live. Or like I was looking at the lines where Jupiter run through, and it's not where I am right now. Although this one wasn't too bad, Adelaide wasn't too bad, but it's bizarre where those lines run through. Have you done much of that yourself?
The astral cartography, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I used to be, it's not like I never believed it, but I never took it as seriously in that I thought maybe the way the lines run weren't as like simple as that. But from people's experience, like I've heard people say when they've gone to a place with their Venus line, they experience like greater romance or like they have these significant events. I've heard people with the Mars line say, "Oh, that was horrible," or "That was really harsh." So it's just made me look more into personally traveling to see, what my experience with these lines are, get some good field experience. But yeah, I definitely want to look more into that because I know on the surface it's a lot more complex too than that. But I mean, that's kind of fascinating to just know that with the lines there, and also like if you're in spaces in between lines too, how that like can influence and whatnot. And for Jenny, astrocartography is looking at your astrology chart and seeing what lines of your planets fall through any country you're in or any location you're in, which is really interesting. But yeah, happy.
It's complicated.
Yeah, no, definitely, especially with I didn't know you can choose different aspects that you can have run through there and all that. So that's what's cool. I see Jordan lives on the Pluto, born and raised. That's what's up. Yeah. So Merry full moon, by the way. The moon is, I would think, on your rising. So
It is, yeah.
it's okay.
Hopefully some good vibes kick in over the next couple of days, which will be nice.
I consider Pisces the vibe, so I think you nailed it. That we're gonna definitely be vibing during that transit. So that's definitely what's up. Dreaming with Tess says, "Happy birthday," by the way.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
Happy birthday, Leo Nation. How has this Leo season been for you so far?
Leo season, you're asking me, right? Yeah. Leo season. Leo season has been good. I feel like I wait all year to come to Leo season. As a typical Leo would say, all the other ones are just sort of killing time for us. But I'm glad to be out of Cancer season. Cancer season was hectic. All the water signs, Pisces and Cancer season, and even Scorpio season. They're probably my worst seasons to be in. I feel, I start losing the will to live.
No,
Not
it
really, but in a dramatic Leo fashion, that's what it feels like for sure.
means a lot knowing that you represent the fire sign, and fire and water have a very strange relationship. So it definitely has more credence. But I didn't know at the time your moon was in Cap. I forgot. So that even doubly is there because I've learned what it feels like to deal with Cancer suns having a moon in Cap. It's like they kind of see into our soul, but at an instinctual level, like when they're feeling or caring, we like detach. I mean, not to say we're not emotional, but I really I find that dynamic kind of interesting. How like the moon cat can sometimes fight or connect with the Cancer sun, but it's pretty nurturing.
But yeah, well, with my aqua rising as well, even more so, there are times where I want to detach from, the feelings, if you will. So yeah, it gets a bit tricky because I don't mind. I don't mind being expressive, and my natural gifts and ability is feel. I'm very intuitive in that way, so everything just feels super heightened, and it gets too much. But we're in Leo season now, fire season, and it feels good because it feels like there's a bit more action. That's the momentum for action is starting to build now, which is good because this year, I don't know about you, but this year has felt like it's just been dragging along. I don't even know how we've got halfway through the year now, and it's gone fast, but at the same time, it feels like it's been dragging.
Well, I'm glad you said it's gone fast because it definitely, I mean, we're already in August, but I do agree where it has gone fast, but like it doesn't feel like it's sped by. Like, actually, I can kind of mind blown. We're actually in August, so it did go fast. But yeah, it's like each month is kind of going by very. So, like July felt like it lasted forever. I'm not gonna lie, but we're already in August, so that's very interesting. I know, like psychologically, the older you get, the faster time seems to like kind of speed by. But yeah, it's definitely also once again just really interesting because I feel like we can, especially with your moon and cap and then the rising aqua, it's like we can get a feel of the whole collective and like how kind of everything kind of connects. And that's another thing, like when you were asking how I felt before, that's also what I probably meant to say as well. Like uh it's hard to put a finger on what I or we're feeling, but it's like we can feel what's happening to the collective before everyone else kind of knows, and just kind of being stuck in that middle place, like, wait, how is this going to play out? What does this mean? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I said it before with like feeling like going this way, but my soul wants to go this way. But yeah, how do you feel your relationship between your Leo Sun and Cat Moon is? How do they go?
Sometimes they get along. Sometimes it feels like, I'm being pulled in opposite directions as well. It's kind of hard to say. I was listening to one of the posts that you put up yesterday about the different signs and soul power, soul energy, and soul. What was the other one? Soul magic.
Oh man, yeah.
And so yeah, and so because I'm a Cap Moon, you were describing that as soul power, and that was on a collective level, godlike collective level. You said, and that really hit home, and it resonates what you were saying before. I do feel really strongly about what the collective is feeling, and so that sensitivity is a bit tricky to manage. But the Leo part of it, it can be good and not so good, because sometimes I get really fired up about really important topics, especially things where we're seeing a lot of people operating out of alignment, out of integrity, and you want to sort of shake the world, if you will. And then there's the other part where there's like a lot of compassion, um, a lot of want to lead. And so as long as I'm paying attention and taking time out to recognize what is mine and what's the collective, because staying in that collective energy all the time can get a bit much.
Mm.
I can't rest when I'm in that energy all the time. But I've got a much more respectful nature of it now than I used to. When I was younger, I had no idea that was what was happening. And I
Yeah.
was like really like, I was like a little baby lion, just like rah, all the time. And now, I've as I've matured, I've the growl is sort of gone down a bit now, but I fire up when I need to about passionate sort of global topics, if you will. And sometimes I use it in the conversations, like with yourself. We were talking a lot when I interviewed you about stuff that's happening in the collective. So I've found a useful outlet for it. And sometimes I paint. I'm an artist as well, so I paint those feelings through. And that's basically how I manage that feeling. But that's only, I would say that's only been in the last 5 years that I found that balance really. It's taken a bit of time for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a feature of Earth or just our person. Yeah, Earth definitely likes to take its time, and I think that can frustrate the air and the fire. That's like now, we're already here. We're already here. So like, yeah, and then the earth is like, hold on, we're getting there. But then, knowing that this is connected to your 12th house, I definitely want to research the psychology of 12th house moon, really the planets, but the moon for sure, because it's the ruler of your sixth. So I always felt like the 12th house, and especially 12th house moons, are legendary souls. Like there's the Pisces moon, that's like the legend soul, but 12th house moons are like legendary souls, especially in Cap. I feel like that can feel like, or I believe that can feel like you're hidden, or like you're misunderstood, or like maybe expressing, or maybe you feel like you need that like solitude. But I can only imagine what it's like in Capricorn, and how psychic that might make one, and how it could be hard to put that into words as well.
Absolutely. And that sums up pretty much how I feel, because I go from wanting complete and total solitude where I don't want to see a single person. I don't want to look at my phone. I really want to be completely disconnected. And then there's the other side of things where, because I've got that psychic ability, I can see not only when I'm talking to individuals, their fullness, which that can feel a bit intimidating to be on the receiving end of, and I'm more conscious of it now. But that can make me feel a bit like I'm in solitude as well, because what I see other people can't see, and that can be a bit tricky to manage, to be honest, because I feel it can feel a bit lonely. So talking to people like yourself, and hearing your expression and seeing the way you communicate, and all the things that you say completely resonate with me. It does make, it does make me feel less lonely for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Especially that 12. I love that you said lonely, because that 12th house feeling could feel very lonely. It could feel very like, just very misunderstood. And I think now that there's just more discourse on the existence of a 12th house, and really like coming into that Pisces and intuition, it's good to breathe. It's good to kind of share that, get that out. And I'm glad you referenced the interview we did, because what I took away from that was how we ended up having to redo that, and that ended up being so much better. And the timing that we did that too just seemed to be perfect. So we're learning to embrace, stuff like that.
And I'll tell you why we needed to redo it. And this is like with full disclosure. That was because I it is very rare for me to come across a divine masculine, and you are fully in that zone. So when you will crack up laughing at this. This is something that you definitely don't know. So here we go. So when I first spoke to you, when we had the pre-chat before we recorded the podcast, I broke out in a physical sweat. And luckily, you weren't in the room with me to see, but I had like a full sweat mode going on. I was drenched in sweat, because my energetic system just hadn't had an experience like that. And so it made sense that my energy wasn't quite ready to interview you. And so when it didn't work, and it was funny that my part didn't record, your part recorded, but not mine. I fully understood that it was because I just wasn't ready yet. And that really talks to relationships, isn't it? Right? When you think about, I'm single, so when you think about wanting that person to come in, I could fully see, even just talking to you, and that's like a just a normal conversation that we're having about astrology. I was curious about the work that you do. I wanted to know more. Wasn't anything other than that, but
Yeah.
my physical body energetically just wasn't ready. But then the second time, when we recorded last week, that conversation, I mean, we were riffing so beautifully in that conversation, and I saw my growth in that too, because I was relaxed with you, and it was magical, and I can't wait to share that.
Yeah, and I think you said something so important. First of all, I think that's very incredible how you even noticed like those nuances of you know how, because I feel like that could happen to somebody and they would just think like, oh damn, the technology didn't work, but you knew how that kind of related to you, and you know, how you were able to grow from that. But what you said hit home so much because that's been s- a- as far as like rushing and wanting to jump into relationships versus really, or the concept you brought forth versus just really accepting if you're ready to even step into a commitment like that. Because that really reminded me of how, you know, I can be in a position to just desire and limerence, like connectivity with somebody. And I know personally my Venus falls in like the 12th house, or like 12th house of my sun. So I can really be in love with the idea of love or just like imagine it. But what really starts to, I won't say freak me out, but um trip me out to a sense, is the whole notion that, wait, this relationship can be real. Like, oh snap, this is outside of my head. And then insecurities start to raise up. Like, wait, I can't believe, it's like the illusion dips away, and it's like, wait, am I even ready to like do something like this? None of that mattered before when the doubts are coming up, and I was like, no, I can do this, I can do this, until it's actually like real. And not to say that I'm not excited to still explore that, but it's something that I hadn't really taken much notice of until it pops up, and it's just like, oh, it makes me look very sober at it, and then I start to be like, thank God that I still single, because I could have just rushed into something, or not thank God I'm still single. Thank God that I didn't just rush into this, because it's just that moment of soberness and clarity. And yeah, just learning to like follow that and listen to that more. And even outside of just relationships, just really trusting the soul. And I don't know if it's the cap thing compared to our son, but that's been a huge bittersweet moment where the soul has its own like progression, but it might be too slow to you to be like, damn, if I do it the way you want to do it, I'm not going to have any fun, or I'm not going to really have any options. Only realizing that no, it really does know best. It really is guiding us in our best interest. So I'm so glad you said
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I for the most part, I have convinced myself, obviously convincing, because I was like, no, I'm definitely ready for a beautiful divine masculine. Absolutely, 100%. Where is he? You know, all of those things. And then, you know, then I have the conversation with you, and I just thought that that was, you know, I didn't realize that I was going to have that physical reaction, and then I did, and because I have got that self awareness, and I could feel physically what was happening. I realized, hang on a minute, you know, actually there is still some growth, and maybe that's why it hasn't happened yet. That that connection hasn't occurred, because I need to put my, you know, my big girl pants on and and step into it some more, and even trust myself to let go, because in our conversation last week, I felt totally free in that conversation, so comfortable and so free in talking to you, and it showed because of the way our conversation flowed so beautifully.
it was very fun. I love the questions you
Yeah.
asked. Definitely were awesome to answer. Let me know what you feel about this too. And you guys in the live chat, please comment if you felt this. I'm sure we all feel an element of this, but you know, I've overcome considerable amounts of insecurity that we know we all overcome. But like, especially when it comes to dating, um, I've reached a place where I'm truly secure in myself and what I have to offer. Like I would date myself. You know what I mean? Like I feel like uh, I would I would I wouldn't necessarily be afraid or worried about expressing myself. But what's that feeling where it's like you almost know what society expects? You almost know what that person might like. And it's like, okay, I might not really be that kind of person. I'm going to show you myself. Or it's not even like you're not their type, but it's like, you know what society expects, you know what, you know, people who are supposed to do, and you already know going in, like, I'm not even trying to fulfill or meet that. So it just feels like a big obstacle, right? Not that we shouldn't still like, you know, challenge ourselves to move forward into that, but have you experienced that? Have you felt that? Like knowing you're secure in yourself, you know you're a good partner, but what might be expected as far as like, oh, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, you're supposed to do that, and realizing, okay, like what if the partner I'm getting with feels that way, even though your partner is going to love you for you, which I've been learning to accept, like very deeply. But just these kind of logistics and how things can get outside the way. And Jen, that's my ethos too, completely that, totally.
Y-
But yeah.
yeah. Look, I mean, I've recently started to grow out my blonde hair. I'm not naturally blonde, but I'm grey now, and so I'm growing it out. And even that I'm mid 40s, so even that is way different from the mass. So when I'm out and about, I physically look different from all the beauty standards. So that already feels like an obstacle, and I do feel very solid in what I've got to offer someone else. That part feels fine, but it's the physical, the physical things that people expect you to look a certain way. And then because I've got the intuitive ability as well, thank you, beautiful. Because I've got the because I've got the intuitive gifts as well, that makes me feel even more like an alien. So those two things, just those two things, make me feel like a complete and total weirdo with obstacles in front, because I feel like sometimes if I'm engaging with people who are not uh, not so open, I don't even know that I'm triggering them because of my psychic things. I don't even know that that's what I'm doing to them, but I can see that they're like deers in the headlights. So my combination of just being free in that way, yeah, can feel disrupting, and sometimes I feel that kind of makes me feel insecure because I am different, but then I don't know how else to be because I know intuitively this is what I need to do. So it's strange. It's a strange one for sure.
I remember a decade ago, personally, I my mentor's grandma, who was also an Aquarius, and his grandma had given me a reading, and she had said something that stuck to me to this day, where she was like, I really need to get out the habit of like, and I truly believe you resonate with this too, as a Cap Moon, as the Aqua Rising. I need to stop like lowering myself or lowering my standards just so I can fit in, and like not so much have people like me, but like not be so different. I didn't realize unconsciously it's like, let me not be my true alien self because that's so weird to people. Let me actually do that. I didn't realize that even today, a lot of the issues and clashes always stem from me forgetting that it's okay to be where we're at and who we are, and we don't have to try and like put on a human suit just to like get people who like that. And of course, it's common sense, but just overcoming the habits that have us, slip back into doing that because we're conditioned to do that, So, it's very, very, very interesting. It made me embrace that, considering how rare it is, considering how legendary and rare it is to even for you to be who you are, where you stand out from so many different people. It made me accept it wouldn't be far off to think that the person for you would be just as rare and legendary. So you're not going to see them like everywhere, like everywhere else. So definitely was
And
so.
yeah, I mean, I have that knowing, like I do know that, which makes it um frustrating but exciting at the same time, because on a soul level I know what that other person is like, so I know that they're not found in the mass. But uh, you know, there's a lot of things. I spend a lot of time. I love fashion. I am obsessed with design and that side of things. But sometimes I think, what would I be choosing if I didn't see all the things that I was seeing? So if I wasn't scrolling on Instagram, would I still want the things that I am longing to buy, for example? Would I still, is that just being thrown at me to tell me what I actually want? And so a lot of the time I disconnect from socials and things, and I spend time, really tapping into what would I wear, how would I present, what does that future version of me if that, that's my true expression, that future version of me, how is she operating? What would she be choosing? And I try as much as I can to use that in my decisions now. But when I was younger, and I hadn't had my, sort of awakening, if you will, and being very unconscious with all of the decisions as we do, you're influenced because you sort of want to blend in. But now I definitely don't. But at the same time, it's not the outside that's not blending in, really. It's the inside. But I accept that I am an alien like, being, and sometimes I get a real kick out of it. Sometimes I turn it right up on purpose because it's entertaining for me, for sure. For sure. But I think, I think, our society, I think there's a comfort, when you look at kids when you're at school, all they want to do is blend in with each other, and everyone's doing the same thing. But as you get older, that unique part of you really wants to come out. And just, from a society perspective, we're conditioned to all be the same. That's how they make money. That's how our culture wants to be. But that is also, part of the reason why we're all so disconnected from our truth. If everyone was operating in their entirety, imagine what kind of world we would be in.
Oh yeah, that's a fascinating concept too, and to see, which makes me think, if how much of these things that are fated versus free will that could have people step in there, which I think we're headed into a time where that might be more than possible. But I did realize too, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio are social, and then Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus are opposite those social signs. So I call them antisocial, right? So we know you have the Aqua rising and the Leo sun. I think that makes you part of the antisocial social club. Do you resonate?
Totally. And I'm very picky about, now more so, I'm conscious of where I'm spending my time and who I'm giving my energy to. So there is definitely a standard in there. But my friends understand. I love good playtime. I'm definitely out there. I like getting amongst it, and then it's, when it's time off, it's time off. And they understand that. But even, sometimes, that gets a bit tricky with clients. I'm in marketing, as you know. And when I'm talking to clients, sometimes I like just to get the job done, just get in and get out, so I can go back to creating, which is what I do best. But yeah, anti-social, social, that feels right. Yeah.
And for those who may not be aware as well, and shout out to you guys watching, how did you get inspired to create this podcast?
Well, for the most part, I felt that I was having, these beautiful conversations with incredible people, and those conversations was just, it was just one on one. But I felt sad that not everyone was getting to listen to these conversations. So I wanted to create the podcast because I was coming across people who were doing incredible work like yourself. And so they're all change makers in their own right. They're all awake. They're all very aware. And they are truly heart led. And that's why it's called heart led change makers, because they're passionate. And mostly, I just wanted to chat to these awesome people for a purely selfish reason, without any outcomes in mind. I just felt intuitively that's what I needed to do. And I'm a chatterbox. So I just felt like this was a good outlet for me, for sure. For sure.
And at least, which I mean, that just to recapture that moment too, and when just people flow and you got it out there, and that's beautiful. Would you consider that? I mean, obviously, I can imagine you've been in the game. So, what as far as like your journey and path of self development? So, how also does that integrate with that? And when would you say you started your personal journey? I know it's a lifetime thing, but yeah.
It is. So I had my spiritual awakening 15 years ago. So, and it feels like spiritual awakening every day since then.
Right.
I don't feel like it stopped. But then, so I had quite a big trauma. I had 4 miscarriages. I was divorced, and it was just all really full on. So that triggered things in a major way, and it was a gift, even though I didn't feel like it at the time. But I was basically a shell of myself. Who you see today is not the Maryanne back then. That's for certain. And so then I started having kinesiology, and that helped me break through all the subconscious programming and the patterns that kept me in toxic relationships. And because of the significant change that it made in me, I actually wanted to start learning kinesiology, and I wanted to pay it forward. So for 8.5 years, I was a therapist in kinesiology, and I was doing meditation. I was teaching people how to be a kinesiologist in my own method, because I was learning, deeper stuff around crystals and Reiki and all sorts of things. So it was a blended mix, and it was incredible, and I love that time. And then I didn't treat being a kinesiologist respectfully, because before that I'd worked in a corporate, excuse me, and so I treated the business like a machine. I wasn't respecting my own energy. And so I was working seven days a week, and working like 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And that is too much when you're a therapist in that way. I mean, that was just crazy. And so, of course, after 8.5 years, I sort of lost my love for it. But in that time, I found the art side of things, and then I moved back into marketing and strategy. But the interesting thing is, I say marketing, but it's not actually that, because I'm actually using my intuitive gifts to help clients. So I don't say that because I don't say that so openly. Like, if you go onto my website, you and if you're switched on, you get the gist. But the current clients that I have, I'm sort of like an undercover intuitive marketing person, and so that's sort of how that happened. And then one of my clients had me interviewing some of their members and some of their guests for like on their, like, in part of their business. And so I started to realize that was actually something I really enjoyed doing. And then when I put together the fact that I could talk to other incredible people and build a community of these amazing people who are changing the world, and they're at all different levels. Some of them are gold medalists. One I interviewed was Katrina Webb. She's a gold medal Paralympian, and she's incredible, but she is very intuitive. Most people don't know that, but I happened to meet her and saw her talk, and I knew she was channeling, and I approached her and I was like, I see you, and I see what you're doing there, and I'd really like to talk to you. So she's been on the show. I've got people who are, have 100 followers on Instagram, but I just was so inspired by the work that they're doing. I wanted to talk to them. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter their status. It just matters that they are truly wanting to change this world. And that feels like a culmination of all of my skills and all of my experience and my intuitive gifts together, because in those conversations, I'm channeling the questions, and I set an intention that the guests on the show and myself will channel in what the audience needs to hear at that time. And sometimes what I've got planned, we veer way off track, but it's not off track. It's actually on track. It's just, it just goes, in another way, but it's magic. And I love every conversation, like one with a whole heart, love all of them. I can't even pick a favorite. I mean, ours is right at the top of my list because that's the most current, but
Okay.
it just felt the most like bouncy. Some of the people that I interviewed, it's not back and forth like this. It's sort of me just asking, and they're responding, and I'm adding. But ours was really, quite unique, and it's super special.
Once again, I really love I love that you just said super special. I love the questions that you asked. They were very amazing. And you just did something right now that gives me chills, because sometimes, like, the alignment of energies are just so true. It reflects in our language, And you said that our connection and video was super special, and it's cool because both Leo and Gemini sun meet in Cancer, and Cancer is special. So like that's literally the vibration of what we did. And I know I kind of sometimes I kind of feel it's redundant to just kind of say that, but like I just kind of love when that kind of happens, when we really just kind of speak the nature of what it is. But yeah, I remember on that talk you said something very profound and fun, where you mentioned how you miss the days where you can go out and people were kind of wanting to, before the club closes or the bar closes, try and talk to people, and how like these days people are just on their phone, and that interpersonal communication is just lacking. It's not there like it used to be. So to kind of expand on that, I'm actually very curious, how do you feel this has impacted men that are older who have also, like, do you feel like, because it's easier to see in younger men who probably were born with technology and are used to that. Have you seen that change, older men and even older women too, like people who were before that, or people who kind of like how what's the climate there? Is it a lot more of them that are like, oh, I don't like how this is now, or have you seen most of them kind of like convert and do that?
Do you know what's funny? Watching your little skit this morning about people interacting, like back in the day, people would approach, and now women are like, "Why are you not approaching?" That's really, it was on point. And the reason that I liked it so much is the last few days I was at a festival, a music festival, blues festival, because I love blues music. And the crowd, I was the youngest out of everyone there, which was a nice change, because usually I feel like I'm the oldest wherever I go. So this was quite good. But what was interesting, in what I noticed about the men there, was that they would, they would sort of side eye you and sort of check you out, whatever else, but there was no approaching at all. Like, you could just feel the fear,
Yeah.
so much fear. And even if you smiled and you did all the things, I put my sparkly eyes on, it was so funny. Like, it was just like they were stuck in, it just felt like they were stuck in concrete. And
Yeah.
it is, yeah, super accurate. But it feels, it's kind of strange, because uh, I think the guys who are like 45 to 50, 55 have been through the ringer. So they have been in relationships, quite serious relationships. Probably they've probably been divorced. They've got kids. It's probably a bit intense, and so they feel a bit. I feel like a lot of them are doing the internal work at the moment, and they're not quite. To me, it feels like they're in an incubator. They don't feel quite ready, and I feel like they're a bit skeptical and a bit disheartened, if you will. And they're probably not ready to receive the divine feminines who have already been doing all the work. So I feel like, as a collective, there are so many beautiful divine feminines who are just ready for the taking. Like, they're just waiting, like sitting ducks, just waiting for their beautiful partner. But those guys, I feel like they're not quite ready yet. The ones up from that, I feel like they've had probably more time to work through their stuff, but they are scared half to death. They don't really know how to communicate. And I feel like, because of the woke, narrative, now everyone's too scared to even say the wrong the wrong thing. So when you think about how people used to interact when, when I was, back at the clubs or whatever else, if you didn't talk to someone there that night, you would have to wait a full other week to talk to them. Whereas now, I think people have gotten a little bit lazy, because they know that they can swipe.
Mhm.
I've seen groups of, and I was saying this to you, I've seen groups of, you know, beautiful, guys all together, and a table right next to them of stunning women, and they don't speak at all, and they go and they leave their, they leave the evening never having even spoken. Whereas back in the day, that was not the case. They would speak to you, they would be swarming, and it was awesome. and it was very good for the ego, especially as a Leo. I loved it. But it's true. I'm just being honest. It was good for the soul, but now it doesn't feel like that. And it's not because it's really easy to fall into the illusion that you're not wanted, or you're not attractive, or all of those things, but that's not actually what's real, because people are observing you, and you are of them, but it's just too much. And now people are, yeah, I think people are just a bit jaded and a bit confused. It feels messy. That's what it feels like.
I love that description. It's very true, especially the influx of just media and like technology and because if you think about it on a surface level, like, oh, I like that you said divine masculine and put in work is just a different type of call to action in DFs, which I think it's important to recognize that there are people who've been doing the work. Yeah, like the a lot of what people are afraid of in retrospect isn't even really that big a deal. Like, even if, because there's that whole notion of rejection, but I think unlike before, people have so much more options that they think are options. It just, there's just not that sense of urgency. Like you were saying, like instead of having to wait another week, and ironically, it's like all this sense of options and like seemingly stuff kind of is an illusion that just kind of takes away. Not to say that there isn't, but yeah, it's just really fascinating to see. And it's fascinating that, we're the ones going through it, because I can totally imagine like the generation of kids being born now and after us are going to laugh at us. They're going to be like, wow, like, I can't believe you guys went through. Who knows, like, if they balance back to where it used to be, or they even take it further and like they don't even like talk. So that would be really interesting. But yeah, I'm definitely really interested in just social dynamics in general, because the way that we identify ourselves now is also so different, and it just kind of puts into perspective so much more of potential complications or more alignment. And what do you feel about moving forward, the nature of dating? Like, what advice would you have for people who are cool with dating but don't want to, of course, compromise what it is that they stand for, and how to navigate through these things?
You're asking me. I'm looking at you to tell me that. I watch you for that reason, to give me some hope and some answers. I don't know. No, you're like, listen. You're my inspiration. I don't know. I'm hoping I'm going to get the answer when I watch what your content. I think I mean, my advice is, do what you intuitively feel like you need to do. So for me, I don't feel like I want to be on the apps. I feel like those conversations are too superficial for what I need. I feel like a lot of them are based on just the physical aspects, where I need the deeper conversation. And the many times that I've attempted to go on there and to connect in that way, it feels like I'm investing a lot of time, and it just never felt right. So I would say, if it makes sense to you and you're feeling this, a call to it, if you're seeing the signs, if you're getting that guidance to jump onto the apps, then definitely do that. I think it is imperative that if you feel that nudge when you see someone in person, that you actually let yourself be vulnerable. As challenging as it is, my advice is to try. I saw a meme the other day where it was somebody who looked like they were flirting, but they had a resting bitch face on. That's what I look like when I'm flirting. I'm not smiley like this.
Yeah.
It's like serious face, Maryanne, but I am. That's my way of flirting. But the other person probably thinks I'm just giving them a death stare. That's not the case at all. But I think if someone approaches you, or if you feel like someone, you're engaged in a little bit of conversation, just try, to breathe through it, and just to let someone see the best of you. That's all that we can do, right? If you're if you're truly working from the heart space and you're putting all of your insecurities in the bin, that's going to give you your best bet. And just, I think, there are some amazing divine masculines out there, and there are some beautiful divine feminines out there too. So I don't feel like they don't exist. They do exist, and I get to interview all those people now as part of my show, so I know that they exist in its entirety. But I think, don't get distracted by the ones who are not seeing the truth of you, and just remember that you are being seen. You may just not see that they're seeing you. That's my advice.
Yeah, that part too, because we can get so wrapped up in our own narratives and our own thoughts that that outside you never know what someone might and that's very beautiful because like we can look at ourselves in a way and the same thing that we don't like about ourselves someone loves, or think is not that important, someone looks at the world of. So that's definitely really amazing, and shout out to those of you on the chat that really loved the advice. That was very beautiful. I'm glad I asked. I think also relative to that, another thing that kind of turns me, I mean, I'm not gonna say it turns me on or off because everyone is different, and it does allow you to challenge to get into each other's heads. But it's difficult to really get to know people when all you want to do is go out your way to talk about the craziest, deepest stuff, but you have to get through the small talk hurdle. And to like get that, that's one thing I've been so removed and in my own world that I forget I'm in Earth. And it's like, oh wait, there's people do things in this world. What do these humans talk about? Hey, did you see the game or some stuff like that? I just suck at that. Like I don't even try to even be good at that. I realize how stubborn I am. Like I just want to completely just let me see how crazy I can talk on this first conversation. But no, I'm also cool with adapting, and I know that there are other people who probably also aren't fans of small talk, but still kind of move forward. So, and that's where I also feel like compared to before, there's so many people being open about these things that you would never see people be dead talking about. So I think that also with this new budding generation of people, kind of spice things up. Shout out to King Sigma, kind of putting in a position to um, kind of break through. And I think that's something that's very exciting moving forward, where everyone in the world, despite what you believe in, despite where you're at, there's going to be this sense starting this season, starting Leo season, there's going to be so much more freedom putting yourself out there, really exploring, really, really not being afraid of rejection, because now we're just so much more secure in ourselves. It's like, okay, if you don't like that, I'm just not for you. That's cool. Yeah. And, we could just kind of just explore and keep going, learning to enjoy the journey and all that. I used to hate that saying, but it's, as I get older, it's cool. I'm all right with it now. I'm like, take me to the destination. I don't care about.
Yeah, I feel like I've like mentally punched up and fought the enjoy the journey, commentary. That's the amount of people who say that to me. I've got family who are very keen on me being in a relationship. It feels like they're willing to just give me away to anybody at this point. And that's, I'm not even joking. Like my mum is definitely pretty much like that. If they're single, she lets me know. And that's basically her criteria for people, but that's certainly not my criteria. But I feel like, words are one thing, but even if you're not speaking, your energy tells the story anyway. So if you're wanting to connect with someone else, or if you're around someone that you're interested in, I would consciously feel into how your body is physically feeling around the other person, because sometimes your mind is like, yes, I'm very attracted to that person. I really love what they're saying, but your body may not feel the same way, and your physical body, and especially because I'm very much about the your body will physically tell you what that relationship is going to be like for you. And sometimes it can feel very exciting, your anxiety goes up and it feels good to be in all of that juicy, chat energy in the mind, but physically it might not be so good for you. I know that one connection I did make, where the energy was just so amazing. My body felt physically calm. I felt so heavy in my body, but in a good way. When you're just so grounded, you just feel so relaxed. It was so like that, and I wasn't expecting to have a conversation like that. And it kind of envelops you, and then you just sort of come out of your slumber, and you're like, whoa, did that just happen? And that person wasn't ready to connect with me in that way, and that's fine. They were with someone else, but that experience showed me the contrast when I'm around someone else who the conversation is just superficial and we're just talking about basic shit, which I'm happy to do when I'm tired or when I don't feel like, when I'm feeling antisocial. Then I could talk about basic. I'm happy to talk. They can just talk to me about basic shit. I don't care. But like 80% of the time, the conversation, and it doesn't need to be intense and heavy, but there just needs to be depth. I'm a very curious person. I ask a lot of questions. I want to know, the multi layers of that person. So they need to be able to do that. I think, connecting to what feels right for you, but sometimes you can do that without speaking, and that's probably even better than the words.
And also just, patience too, with what we said before, because our soul does know best. And I love what you just said about the body, because that made sense of a lot of that was my biggest disconnect between my Gemini and Capricorn. My body, my whole life, would always tell me what's up, but I would either get so caught up in my thoughts, or I put the rose tinted glasses on, that I learned to suppress that. I didn't realize that that was my body communicating. I thought, well, I just feel this way because of whatever. But, and I can tell, especially with our cat moons, that body response is on it. It's not a
Yeah, it is. I mean, in my history, I've experienced a great deal of trauma. So from a kid and pretty much all the way through, because it was, it was reinforced with all the traumatic experiences that I've had, I learned to disassociate. So my natural automatic response when the energy felt too intense, good or bad, was to disassociate from my body. So I didn't want to feel the things that I was feeling, because it was a safety and protection. But even when it was good experiences, I would do that. So I wasn't really, I wasn't really filtering things properly. And so I've had to work very hard over the years to make sure that I don't do that. And a lot of that was, I had to consciously, just talk to myself while someone was talking to me, to go, just stay there. Even though this feels uncomfortable, just stay in your body. Everything's fine. And, I was always, safe, but you just sort of get into a habit of it. And sometimes people don't realize that's what they're doing until it was my niece actually who said, are you all right? And I was like, actually, I think I'm just disassociated. Wait a minute, how often am I doing this? And it was after that I was like, whoa, I'm doing that way more than I should be. And so yeah, it takes a lot of time and a lot of self work and a lot of self awareness to make sure that you're staying anchored in your body, like I said, in the good experiences and in the not so good experiences.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you once again for joining us. This was really awesome. I do have your website in the link down below. Could you explain a bit of that? Like what can people how can people reach out to you, and what kind of services could they reach out to you for?
Yeah, so it's a mixed bag. You can find me on Instagram at Maryanne Katsidis. I have lots of different content on there. You'll see lots of my art stuff on there. You can reach out to me via my website as well, which is maryannekatsidis.com. I I help clients with strategy and social media management. So if you've got a business or you're wanting to start a business, and you want some strategic advice that is intuitive, please reach out. I'm happy to work with you one-on-one. And please listen to Heart-Led Change Makers. That's a podcast you'll find on Spotify and on Apple and all the other platforms as well. But that's on Instagram too. There's some incredible people on there, exactly like the Peace Dealer, which it comes out not this Friday, next Friday. So stay tuned for that. But that's an incredible conversation. I highly recommend that you watch it. But thank you for having me on the show. I've loved talking to you. Like I said a million times, I could talk to you for hours and hours.
Thank you. And did you have final words of wisdom or any advice for people walking this path?
Yes, just even though the world is crazy, make sure that you keep leading from the heart. That is your superpower, 100%. And there are people who see you. I see you, and that's how we're going to create change.
Amen to that. All right, y'all. Make sure you definitely show her some love. I once again got the links down below. You guys stay blessed as always. Thank you for staying tuned. And yes, until next time.
See ya.